First contact gone wrong. The briefing room aboard the research vessel Stellar Dawn was colder than usual, or perhaps it was just Zara's nerves making her shiver. She adjusted her environmental suit and focused on the holographic display showing a blue and white sphere, rotating slowly in the center of the room. Earth. Her assignment for the next solar cycle. Commander. Vorik paced around the hologram, his forearms clasped behind his back in the traditional Zanari gesture of authority. His violet eyes studied each of the junior researchers assembled before him, but they lingered longest on Zara. She was the youngest cultural anthropologist ever selected for a solo observation mission, and everyone knew it. The humans of Earth represent one of the most paradoxical species we have encountered, Vorik began, his voice carrying the weight of countless missions. They possess nuclear weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, yet they also create art that moves even our emotionless allies. The Christek. They wage wars over resources while simultaneously sending aid to their enemies during natural disasters. They are in every sense unpredictable. Zara had studied the files extensively. Humans were classified as a Level 2 civilization, still bound to their home planet but advancing rapidly. Too rapidly, some in the Galactic Council argued. The Zanari had been tasked with observing them to determine if they posed a threat to the established order of the galaxy. The observation protocols were strict. No direct contact. No interference. No revelation of alien presence. Zara would spend months in a cloaked observation pod, recording human behavior from the safety of low orbit. Her biosensors would analyze their emotional patterns, their social structures, their potential for either destruction or evolution. Remember, Vorik continued, his gaze settling on Zara again, humans have an unusual capacity for pattern recognition. They see faces in clouds, conspiracies, and coincidences. Even with our best cloaking technology, you must remain vigilant. One mistake could expose our presence and potentially trigger a planetary panic. 3 days later, Zara sat alone in her observation pod as it detached from the Stellar Dawn. The pod was a marvel of Zanari engineering, no larger than a human transportation vehicle, but equipped with everything she needed for extended observation. Life support, food synthesizers, quantum communication arrays, and most importantly, the sensory suite that would allow her to monitor human activity from orbit without detection. The descent to observation altitude was routine. Zara had practiced it hundreds of times in simulation. She would position herself in geosynchronous orbit above the Australian continent, specifically chosen for its relatively low population density and minimal military presence. From there, she could observe a diverse range of human activities while maintaining safe distance. But space, as the humans themselves had learned, was unpredictable. The cosmic radiation burst came without warning. One moment Zara was calibrating her sensors, and the next every system in the pod screamed alerts. The cloaking field collapsed first, then the navigation systems, followed by the anti-grav stabilizers. In the span of seconds, her sophisticated observation platform became little more than a falling metal coffin. Zara fought with the manual controls as the pod plummeted through Earth's atmosphere. The heat shields held, barely, but she had no way to slow her descent properly. Through the flickering view screen, she watched the Australian desert rushing up to meet her. Red sand and scattered vegetation filled her vision as she braced for impact. The crash was violent but survivable. Zanari were built sturdy, with redundant organs and flexible skeletal structures that had evolved from their predator-filled homeworld. Still, when Zara finally stopped sliding across the desert floor, she could taste copper in her mouth and her left arm hung useless at her side. The pod's emergency beacon was dead. Communications were fried. Life support was failing. The temperature outside was already climbing past what her species considered comfortable, and it was only morning by local time. She had perhaps 2 days before her body began shutting down from heat exposure. Zara had just finished her emergency inventory when she heard them. Voices. Human voices. Her translator implant was still functional, converting their words into meaning she could understand. "Bloody hell, did you see that come down?" A male voice, rough but concerned. "Looked like a meteor, but the trajectory was all wrong," replied a female. "Should we call it in?" "To who?" "We're 200 kilometers from anywhere. By the time anyone gets here, whoever's in that thing could be dead." They had seen her crash. They were coming to investigate. Everything in Zara's training told her to hide, to avoid contact at all costs. But with her pod damaged and her injuries mounting, she had no choice but to remain where she was. The humans appeared over a ridge 20 minutes later. There were 3 of them, dressed in clothing suited for desert research with wide-brimmed hats and sun-protective gear. They approached the pod cautiously, but not with the military precision Zara might have expected. These were scientists, not soldiers. The woman, who appeared to be the leader, stopped about 10 meters from the pod. She had dark skin and keen eyes that took in every detail of the crashed vessel. "That's not any aircraft I've ever seen," she said quietly. "Sarah, look at these marks," one of the men called out, kneeling near the impact trail. "The heat scoring is all wrong for atmospheric entry. And the metal, I don't recognize it." Sarah moved closer to the pod and Zara held her breath. Through the cracked but still polarized view screen, she could see the human woman's face clearly. There was fear there, yes, but also something else: curiosity, concern. "Hello?" Sarah called out, knocking gently on the pod's hull. "Is anyone in there? Are you hurt?" The universal greeting. The offer of aid. Zara had read about human rescue behaviors, their seemingly irrational drive to help others even at personal risk. She had not expected to experience it firsthand. When Zara didn't respond, Sarah turned to her companions. "Mike, get the medical kit from the rover. David, see if you can find a way to open this thing. Carefully." "Sarah, we should really call this in." David protested. "This could be military, or someone could be dying in there," Sarah interrupted. "We're researchers, not bureaucrats. We help first, ask questions later." It took them an hour to find the emergency release. Zara watched them work, noting their methodology, their cooperation, their determination to reach her despite not knowing what they might find inside. When the hatch finally opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere, she saw 3 faces peering in with a mixture of awe and worry. They saw her immediately. 2 meters tall, blue-scaled skin, 4 arms and large, multifaceted eyes. An alien, an actual alien. Zara waited for the screaming, the running, the violence that all the sociological models predicted. Instead, Sarah slowly extended her hand in what Zara recognized as a greeting gesture. "Hello," she said softly. "We're here to help." Mike was already moving forward with the medical kit, his training as a field medic overcoming his shock. "She's hurt," he said, noting the odd angle of Zara's lower left arm and the dark blue blood seeping from various cuts. Different physiology, but trauma is trauma. David stood guard, but not aggressively. He was watching the horizon, looking for others who might have seen the crash. "We need to move her," he said. "If the military tracked that descent, they'll be here within hours. Can you understand us?" Sarah asked Zara directly, maintaining eye contact despite the alien nature of Zara's appearance. Zara made a decision that went against every protocol she had been taught. She nodded. A gesture she had learned was universal among humans for affirmation. "Can you walk?" Sarah asked. Zara tried to stand but stumbled. Her injuries were worse than she had thought. Without hesitation, Mike and David moved to support her, careful not to aggravate her damaged arm. The research station, Sarah decided. It's isolated, has medical supplies, and more importantly, it's off the grid. We can figure out what to do once she's stable. They loaded Zara into their vehicle, what they called a rover, designed for desert research. She noticed they didn't restrain her, didn't treat her as a prisoner or a specimen. They gave her water, which she could drink thanks to similar base chemistry. And Mike kept checking her injuries with gentle efficiency. The research station was a collection of prefabricated buildings powered by solar panels, situated in a canyon that provided some protection from the harsh sun. As they helped Zara inside, she heard David on a communication device. "No, nothing to report. The meteor was just rocks broke apart on impact. No recovery needed." He was lying to his superiors, protecting her. Sarah set up a makeshift medical area, adapting their equipment to work with Zara's physiology. "I'm a xenobiologist," she explained, as if that was perfectly normal. "I study extremophiles, organisms that live in harsh conditions. Never thought I'd be treating an actual alien. But the principles should be similar." As Sarah worked to clean and bind her wounds, Zara found herself studying these humans who had chosen to help her without hesitation. They were nothing like the violent, xenophobic species described in the Zanari databases. They were curious, yes, but also compassionate. They asked questions but didn't demand answers. They offered aid without expecting anything in return. Humanity's true nature. The next morning brought complications. Mike monitored multiple communication channels from the station's equipment room, his face growing increasingly concerned with each intercepted transmission. Military vehicles had found the crash site. They were expanding their search pattern. They'll be here within 6 hours at their current pace, he reported to the others. Maybe less if they get aerial support. Sarah didn't look up from where she was checking Zara's injuries. The human woman had spent the entire night researching, comparing Zara's biology to various Earth organisms, finding creative solutions to treat her alien patient. "Then we move," she said simply. "Move where?" David asked. "We can't exactly hide her at a hotel." "North," Sarah replied. "My colleague Jack has a station near the Simpson Desert. It's even more remote than here, and Jack has his own history with keeping secrets from the government." Zara tried to protest through the translation device Sarah had rigged up using parts from the damaged pod. "Too dangerous for you. Your government will punish. I should surrender." Sarah actually laughed at the suggestion. "You don't know humans very well if you think we're going to hand you over to be dissected in some laboratory." The journey north was treacherous. They traveled at night to avoid satellite surveillance, using backroads and aboriginal paths that didn't appear on any official maps. Mike drove while David navigated, and Sarah tended to Zara's still healing injuries. During one rest stop, as they hid the rover under camouflage netting, Zara asked the question that had been bothering her since the rescue. "Why do you help me? I am unknown, alien, potentially dangerous." David was the one who answered. "You know what makes humans different from most species on Earth?" He didn't wait for a response. "We're curious. We see something new, something unknown, and instead of just fearing it, we want to understand it. And right now, understanding means keeping you safe. But it's more than that," Mike added, checking his equipment. "It's about doing what's right. You were hurt and alone. We could help. That makes it our responsibility. Even if it cost you everything?" Zara pressed. Sarah smiled. "Especially then. The right thing is rarely the easy thing." They reached Jack's station after 3 nights of travel. Jack himself was everything Sarah had described. A grizzled former military scientist who had walked away from a prestigious career rather than continue weapons research. He took one look at Zara and simply said, "Well, this explains all the fuss on the military channels. Come on, let's get you hidden properly." Jack's station was more than just a research outpost. It was a carefully constructed hideaway, with underground facilities that he had built over years of paranoid preparation. "Always knew something like this would happen eventually," he said, leading them down. "First contact was never going to be on the government's terms if I could help it." For the next week, they worked to repair Zara's communication equipment. Jack had resources and knowledge the others lacked, including some illegally obtained military hardware that could boost the signal strength. Sarah continued treating Zara's injuries, which were healing faster than human wounds would have. During this time, Zara observed the humans closely. She watched how they worked together, each contributing their unique skills. Mike's medical knowledge, David's engineering expertise, Sarah's scientific methodology, and Jack's unconventional resources. They argued sometimes, disagreed on approaches, but always found consensus through discussion rather than dominance. She also observed their emotional responses. They were afraid, she could tell. Afraid of being caught, afraid of the consequences, afraid of what her presence meant for humanity. But that fear never overcame their compassion. If anything, it seemed to strengthen their resolve. "Your species," Zara said one evening as they shared a meal. "The reports say you are violent, warlike, dangerous." Jack snorted. "We can be. Humans have done terrible things to each other throughout history. But we've also done incredible things. We've sacrificed ourselves for strangers, crossed oceans to help disaster victims, gone to war to stop genocides. We're contradictions," Sarah added, "capable of great evil and great good, sometimes in the same person on the same day. But when it matters, when we're faced with someone who needs help, most of us choose to be good." The communication device finally came online on the 10th day. Zara sent a coded message to her ship, requesting emergency extraction. The response came quickly, coordinates for a pickup in 12 hours at a location 50 kilometers north. But the military had been closing in. Their search pattern was more sophisticated than anyone had anticipated. As Zara prepared to leave for the extraction point, Mike picked up military chatter indicating they had identified Jack's station as a point of interest. "They'll be here in 2 hours," he warned. "Then we create a diversion," Jack said immediately. "I'll take the rover south, make them think she's with me. The rest of you take her north in the backup vehicle." "That's suicide," David protested. "They'll arrest you for sure," Jack shrugged. "I'm old and I've been a thorn in their side for years. About time I did something worthy of their attention." Before anyone could argue further, Jack was moving, gathering equipment to make his diversion convincing. He paused at the door, looking back at Zara. "You tell your people about us. Tell them humans are more than our worst moments. We're also our best ones." The race to the extraction point was tense. Military vehicles were everywhere, and twice they had to hide as aircraft passed overhead. But Jack's diversion worked. The bulk of the search effort had shifted south, giving them just enough of a window. At the extraction coordinates, a patch of empty desert that looked like countless others, Zara's pod materialized as its cloaking field dropped. It was a rescue shuttle, sent by the Stellar Dawn. The Zanari pilot's eyes widened as he saw humans helping Zara approach. "You made contact," he said, horrified. "They saved my life," Zara replied firmly. "Multiple times at great cost to themselves." Sarah, Mike, and David stood back, watching as Zara prepared to board her shuttle. The moment called for words, but what could be said? They had just proven that first contact between species didn't have to be conflict or conquest. It could be compassion. "Will we see you again?" Sarah asked. Zara turned back to them, these 3 humans who had risked everything for a stranger from the stars. "When my people ask about humans, I will tell them the truth. You are not ready for official contact, perhaps. Your governments would make it complicated, political, potentially violent. But your people are ready. They have been ready since they first looked up at the stars and wondered if someone else was looking back." She reached into her equipment pack and pulled out a small device. "This is a beacon. Keep it safe, keep it secret. When humanity is ready, truly ready as a united species, activate it. We will come not as observers or judges, but as friends." Mike took the device carefully. "How will we know when we're ready?" "When you stop seeing differences as divisions," Zara replied. "When you treat every human the way you treated me, with compassion regardless of origin. You 3, you 4 with Jack, you represent humanity's future. Spread that example." As the shuttle lifted off, cloaking field engaging to hide it from any watching eyes, Zara looked down at the 3 figures growing smaller in the desert. Her mission had failed by every official metric. She had made contact, revealed herself, compromised the observation. But she had succeeded in learning the truth about humanity. They were not the monsters some in the Galactic Council feared. They were not ready for the larger universe, true, still too divided amongst themselves. But they had potential. Incredible, brilliant, compassionate potential. Her report would change everything. Not immediately, perhaps not for years, but eventually. Because she would tell the council about Sarah, who saw an injured being and chose to help. About Mike, who overcame fear to provide medical aid. About David, who stood guard over a stranger. About Jack, who sacrificed his freedom for someone he had known for days. She would tell them that humanity's strength was not in their weapons or their technology, but in their capacity to see past differences and find common ground in compassion, that when faced with the unknown, their first instinct was not to destroy but to understand. The Stellar Dawn was waiting in high orbit. Commander Vorik stood ready to receive her report, his expression stern. "You made contact," he stated, not a question. "I did," Zara confirmed. "And I learned more about humanity in 2 weeks than we have in years of observation." "They helped you?" "They saved me, Commander. At great personal risk, without hesitation, without expectation of reward." Vorik was quiet for a long moment. "This changes things." "Yes," Zara agreed. "It changes everything." As the Stellar Dawn prepared to leave Earth's system, Zara stood at an observation window, looking back at the blue and white sphere. Somewhere down there, 3 humans were returning to their lives, carrying the secret of first contact and a beacon for the future. Humanity wasn't ready for the galaxy yet, but when they finally united as a species and reached out to the stars with one voice, the galaxy would be better for it. Because humans, for all their contradictions and conflicts, had something special. They had the capacity to look at a wounded stranger from another world and see not an alien, but simply someone who needed help. And that, Zara knew, was why humanity would one day stand among the stars not as conquerors or subordinates, but as the bridge between species, the ones who could find common ground where others saw only differences, the ones who could turn first contact into first friendship. The beacon remained on Earth waiting. And in the desert of Australia, 3 humans looked up at the stars with new understanding, knowing that they had represented the best of humanity to the cosmos. They had proven that when it truly mattered, humans would always choose compassion over fear, understanding over ignorance, and unity over division. The story of humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun, and it started not with the invasion or a grand announcement, but with a simple act of kindness in the desert, with humans being human in the best possible way. And that perhaps was the most important discovery of all.